The beast tore through Armies until a human whispered her name. The perimeter fell in 4 minutes. Julian Wade's hands moved automatically, sealing the plasma burn across a young miner's chest while explosions rattled the medical center's reinforced walls. Through the viewport, he caught glimpses of the battle. Flashes of weapons fire, human defenders scrambling behind barricades, and then her. The reports hadn't done her justice. Kesvar moved through the defensive line like a force of nature, twin blades carving arcs of destruction as her striped form blurred between positions. Red and black fur caught the harsh emergency lighting as she leapt, twisted, struck. A defender raised his rifle. She was already inside his guard, blade singing. He dropped. "Dr. Wade, we need to evacuate." Elena Birch's voice crackled through his comm, the colony administrator's usual composure fraying at the edges. 5 more minutes, Julian said, injecting coagulant into his patient's IV line. "You don't have 5 minutes." The building shuddered. Dust rained from the ceiling as something massive detonated nearby, one of their own artillery batteries, he guessed, overloading under sustained fire. Through the viewport, Kessvar vaulted over a burning vehicle, landing in a crouch that spoke of predatory grace honed over decades. Her ears swiveled, tracking targets he couldn't see. Her tail lashed once before she surged forward again. 30 years undefeated. The Empire's perfect weapon. He'd read the intelligence briefings, seen the casualty reports from other colonies. Nobody stopped her. Nobody even slowed her down. "Transport's leaving in 3 minutes," Elena said. "Then it leaves without me." Julian disconnected the comm and nodded to his assistant. "Get him to the ship. I'll grab the emergency supplies." He moved through the medical center's main floor, stuffing equipment into a tactical bag with practiced efficiency. Burn gel, coagulants, surgical tools, antibiotics, anything portable that might save lives in whatever makeshift facility they'd establish. Outside, the weapons fire intensified. Closer now. She was pushing toward the center of the colony, toward the medical district, toward him. The viewport exploded inward. Julian threw himself behind a surgical table as shrapnel screamed past, the reinforced glass disintegrating into 1,000 glittering fragments. His ears rang. Smoke poured through the opening, carrying the acrid smell of burning metal and something else. Blood, ionized air, scorched earth. He risked a glance over the table's edge. Kessvar stood in the street beyond, backlit by flames, both blades dripping crimson. She was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Easily 7 feet of lethal intent wrapped in striped skin that seemed to shimmer in the firelight. Her ears pressed forward, alert. Her yellow eyes scanned the shattered building with predatory focus. Then she moved on, disappearing into the chaos. Julian exhaled slowly and stood, glass crunching under his boots. His hands were steady. Years of trauma medicine had taught him to compartmentalize fear, to function when... The floor dropped. No warning, no groan of stressed metal, just sudden, violent descent as the building's foundation gave way. Julian grabbed for the surgical table, but it was falling too, everything falling, the world a tumbling cascade of equipment and debris, and his own body spinning through space. He hit something hard, heard ribs crack, tasted blood. The lights flickered and died. Emergency strips activated, painting everything in dim red. He lay still, assessing. Left arm wouldn't move properly, dislocated shoulder. Ribs definitely cracked, maybe broken. Right leg pinned under something heavy. Pain was distant, muted by adrenaline. He could hear the settling groan of twisted metal, the hiss of ruptured pipes, and something else. Breathing, harsh-labored, close by. Julian turned his head carefully. The emergency lighting cast long shadows across the collapsed room, picking out the chaotic jumble of fallen equipment and structural beams. And there, half buried under a collapsed support column 3 meters away, was Kesvar. Her blades lay beyond her reach. Blood matted the fur along her left side, dark against the red stripes. One leg bent at an angle that made his medical training scream. But her eyes were open, fixed on him with yellow intensity that promised death despite her injuries. "Don't," she rasped in thickly accented standard. "Come closer." Julian assessed the situation with clinical detachment. The column across her torso had to weigh 1/2 ton. Internal injuries likely, crushed organs, internal bleeding, The leg was definitely broken. She had minutes, maybe less, before shock or hemorrhage killed her. He started working his own leg free. I said don't. Her voice carried the weight of command, of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. You're bleeding out, Julian said, gritting his teeth as he twisted his leg. The debris shifted and he pulled free with a gasp. I'm a doctor. Your prey. Right now, I'm the only thing between you and dying in this rubble. He crawled toward her, dragging his injured leg, his dislocated shoulder screaming protest. So you can threaten me after I've stabilized you. Her ears flattened against her skull. My people don't accept aid from enemies. That's a terrible survival strategy. Julian reached her side and immediately began his assessment. The column's weight was distributed across her rib cage. Miraculous it hadn't crushed her completely. He ran his hands along her side, feeling for the telltale give of broken bones, the heat of internal bleeding. Her skin was fever-hot under the fur, her breathing shallow and rapid. She could have killed him. Even injured, even pinned, she was close enough that those claws could open his throat. Instead, she watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What are you doing? She asked. Triage. Your lungs collapsed. I can feel the displacement. That leg needs setting before the bone fragments do more damage, and you're bleeding internally, probably from a ruptured spleen or liver equivalent. He met her eyes. I need to move this column off you. You can't. Not alone. Julian looked around the wreckage, spotted a fallen support beam that might work as a lever. But I can improvise. Why? The word emerged barely above a whisper. Julian paused, hands still pressed against her side, feeling her pulse race beneath fur and muscle. Because letting someone die when I can help goes against everything I am. Something shifted in her expression, confusion perhaps, as if his words made no sense in any language she knew. He positioned the beam under the column's edge, braced it against stable debris, and pushed with everything he had. His injured shoulder howled. His ribs sent white-hot spikes through his chest. The column shifted a few inches, then a few more. Kessvar dragged herself backward with her good leg, movements weak but determined. The column crashed down where she'd been moments before. Julian collapsed beside her, vision graying at the edges. When it cleared, he found her staring at him. You're insane, she said. Frequently mentioned in my performance reviews. He pulled his medical bag close, extracting supplies with shaking hands. Hold still, this is going to hurt. He worked methodically, running on autopilot and years of training, pressure dressing on the visible wounds, pneumothorax needle to re-inflate the collapsed lung. She snarled but didn't strike him, splint for the leg using debris and medical tape. His fingers moved across her body with professional efficiency, cataloging damage, prioritizing treatment. That's when he felt them. Subcutaneous implants, just below the skin along her spine. Small, regular intervals, definitely artificial. But they weren't military hardware. He'd seen enough of that to recognize standard neural interface ports or combat enhancements. These were different, organic somehow, pulsing with a rhythm that didn't match her heartbeat. What are these? He asked, fingers tracing the pattern. Her ears swiveled back. What are what? These implants along your spine. He pressed gently and felt her tense. You don't have them in your medical files? I don't know what you're talking about. Her voice carried an edge now, uncertainty creeping beneath the authority. Julian pulled out his portable scanner, waved it over her back. The readout made his blood run cold. The implants were active, pumping something into her system, something his scanner registered as toxin. He looked into her yellow eyes and saw his own dawning horror reflected back. We have a problem, he said. The ceiling groaned, sending dust through the emergency lighting. Julian kept his eyes on the scanner. The data held steady. Those implants were releasing compounds into Kessvar's bloodstream, flagged as neurotoxic. Show me, she said. He angled the scanner toward her. Her pupils contracted to slits, ears flat against her skull. One clawed hand flexed, scraping concrete. How long? She asked. Without knowing the specific toxin, I can't say. Days, maybe weeks. He met her gaze. But we need to get out of here first, or the timeline becomes minutes. A support beam buckled somewhere in the darkness. Kessvar tried to rise. made it halfway before her splinted leg buckled. She caught herself on her good arm, breathing hard. "Let me help," Julian said. "I don't need—" The floor tilted 15 degrees. They both slid sideways as something gave way beneath them. Julian grabbed a twisted pipe. Kessvar's injured leg hit jutting rebar, and the sound she made was more snarl than scream. He reached her as the floor stabilized. Blood seeped through the splint. Her breathing came harsh, but when he touched her leg, she didn't pull away. "We need to move deeper," Julian said. "Find a section that hasn't collapsed." "I'll slow you down. You're also 7 feet tall and have claws." He positioned himself under her good arm, taking her weight across his shoulders. His ribs protested, but he pushed through. "Besides, your people are still out there." She allowed him to take some of her weight. They moved through wreckage in awkward tandem, her good leg doing most of the work. Every few steps, she'd pause, ears swiveling. "Your forces?" he asked. "Northeast quadrant, 3 squads converging." Her tail brushed his leg. "They'll dig through this rubble until they find me." Dead or alive. Her silence was answer enough. They found a stairwell that had survived, emergency lighting still functional. Julian guided them down 2 levels where destruction was less severe. Pharmaceutical storage lay scattered across the floor, some containers sealed. "Here," he said, easing her against a wall, "let me recheck your wounds." While he worked, she watched him, not with predatory focus but something analytical, studying him like a puzzle. "Your culture teaches this," she asked, "healing those who would kill you." Medical ethics. Julian cleaned the wound on her leg, movements gentle. "First principle, do no harm. Doesn't matter if you're treating a patient or enemy." "That's weakness." "Is it? I'm keeping you alive. Right now that seems practical." Her ears twitched forward. "My people call weakness. The injured who cannot fight are released from duty." "You mean killed?" "Given honorable death." She watched his hands apply fresh bandaging. It's mercy, preventing suffering. Mercy would be healing them. Julian secured the bandage and moved to check her collapsed lung, letting them choose whether to fight again or find another path. "There is no other path. We are born for war. We die in war." Her voice carried absolute certainty. "That is honor." He pressed his stethoscope against her chest, clearer now, both lungs inflating. "And healing? That's not honorable?" "Healing is maintenance, like repairing a weapon." She winced as he probed her ribs. "It's not done out of compassion." "That seems lonely." Something flickered across her face. Her tail wrapped around her own leg, protective. "I've never been lonely," she said, but the words lacked conviction. He finished and sat back, exhaustion creeping in. His shoulder throbbed, his ribs made breathing painful. But Kessvar was stable. "How long have you been a warrior?" he asked. "Since I could hold a blade, 32 years. Pride crept into her voice. "I've never lost a battle, never retreated, never needed saving. First time for everything." "This shouldn't be possible. Your species is weak, soft." Her yellow eyes fixed on him. "But you pulled that column off me. You're injured and still functioning." Julian managed a tired smile. "We're surprisingly durable when motivated." "What motivates you to save your enemy?" The question was genuine, real confusion as if his actions violated fundamental law. "You're not my enemy right now," Julian said. "Right now you're my patient. Before that, you're a person poisoned by someone she trusted." Her claws scraped concrete. "You don't know that." "I know those implants weren't in any scan. I know they're releasing toxins. Someone put them there without your consent." He met her gaze. "In my culture, that's attempted murder." She looked away, jaw working. Above, something crashed, her ears swiveled. "They're excavating," she said, "or making sure there aren't survivors." Her tail lashed, violent. "You think they'd kill me deliberately?" "I think someone already tried." Julian pulled himself up. "We need somewhere more secure." She rose with him, moving better despite injuries. They worked through the damaged level until they found a sealed section, quarantine room with reinforced walls. Inside, emergency supplies lined the walls. Water, rations, medical equipment. "We can hold here," he said, engaging the locks. Kessvar sank against the wall, movements showing the toll. Blood matted her fur despite his treatment, but her eyes remained sharp. You should rest too, she said. In a minute. You're favoring your left side? Your breathing is shallow? She tilted her head. I've killed enough humans to recognize the signs. Comforting, but he did sit. How many colonies have you taken? 17. No hesitation, this would have been 18. Would have been? Her ears flattened, before you complicated things. They sat in silence, enemy general and human doctor, trapped together, both injured, both questioning everything. Kessvar, Julian said. Her ears perked. How do you know my name? Intelligence briefings, you're famous. Those are titles. She watched him unpack water. My name is just Kessvar. My mother gave it to me before I was taken for training. How old were you? 4 solar cycles, old enough to show promise, young enough to be molded. She accepted the water, their fingers brushing. I don't remember her face anymore. Julian heard the loss beneath her words. What does it mean? Swift shadow. A bitter smile crossed her features. Appropriate for a weapon. Appropriate for a person, he corrected. She handed back the container, eyes searching his face. You speak as if you believe that. Why? The question emerged raw. Why does it matter? Julian moved closer and looked into her yellow eyes. Because I just spent the last hour keeping you alive. That makes it matter. Her breath caught. She was perfectly still, not predator readiness, but vulnerability. Her ears swiveled sharply toward the door. They're here, she whispered. Footsteps echoed through the collapsed levels above them, heavy, methodical, accompanied by the whine of cutting equipment slicing through debris. Kessvar's ears tracked the sounds with precision. How many? He whispered. 6, maybe 8, her claws extended reflexively. Combat engineers with a hunter unit. Looking for you specifically. Looking for confirmation, her tail coiled tight. Dead or alive, they need proof. Julian checked the door's seals. The manual locks would hold against casual inspection, but sustained assault would breach them quickly. He began repacking medical supplies into a portable bag. Can you move? He asked. Can you keep up? She tested weight on the splinted leg, grimacing but standing. Because I won't slow down. The footsteps grew louder, voices now speaking in harsh consonants. Kessvar's ears flattened at something one of them said. Julian asked. They're arguing about search patterns. One wants to mark this section as cleared. The other insists on checking every room. She moved to the door, pressing her ear against metal. The second one is Ralth, my second in command. Is that good or bad? Ralth follows orders. Her voice carried an edge. But he's loyal to me personally. If he finds us, he'll want answers before acting. Julian shouldered the supply bag, ribs screaming protest. And the others? They'll shoot first. The voices stopped directly outside their door. Julian heard equipment being set down, the electronic chirp of a scanner. Kessvar backed away, positioning herself between the door and Julian. The gesture was automatic, protective. Sealed room, a voice said in accented standard. Occupancy sensors negative. Check it anyway, another voice replied, deeper, carrying command weight. Sir, we've cleared 20 sections. General Kessvar is dead. We should... Check the room. Julian met Kessvar's eyes. She gestured toward a secondary door at the far end. He moved toward it as quietly as possible, while she remained focused on the main entrance. The lock mechanism began cycling through override sequences. 60 seconds, maybe less. Julian tried the secondary door, locked but manual release. He pulled it, hinges protesting with a squeal that seemed deafening. The override sequence paused. Movement, someone said, southwest corner. Breach it, Ralth ordered. Julian and Kessvar moved through the secondary door into a corridor stretching into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered at irregular intervals. Behind them, the main door's lock gave way with a metallic shriek. They ran. Kessvar's splinted leg barely slowed her. She moved with predatory grace despite injury, her body finding rhythm in the uneven gait. Julian pushed himself to keep pace, every step sending fresh pain through his ribs. The supply bag bounced against his back. There! A voice behind them, followed by weapons fire. Energy bolts scorched walls, superheating metal and concrete. Julian felt heat wash over him as they rounded a corner. Kessvar grabbed his shoulder and yanked him into a side passage, her strength casual and overwhelming. "Keep moving," she said. They descended through maintenance tunnels, following emergency lighting that grew dimmer with each level. Pursuit sounds faded but didn't disappear. These hunters knew their business. Kessvar stopped at an intersection, ears swiveling. Her breathing came harder now. Blood had soaked through the bandage on her leg. "You're bleeding," Julian said. "I'm alive," she chose the left passage. "That's enough." They found a supply closet 3 levels down, small enough that hunters might overlook it. Julian eased the door shut while Kessvar sank against the wall, finally allowing exhaustion to show. "Let me see your leg," he said. "We don't have time." "You're leaving a blood trail." He knelt beside her and unwrapped the soaked bandage. The wound had torn open during flight, fresh blood mixing with old. "This needs sutures." "Then do it fast." Julian worked by his medical scanner's light, hands steady despite everything. He cleaned the wound, applied tissue adhesive, then wrapped it with fresh bandaging. Kessvar watched him work, breathing controlled but her tail betraying tension. "Why didn't you run?" she asked. "What?" "When the door breached, you could have gone the other direction. Let them find me, use the distraction to escape." Her yellow eyes studied his face. "Instead, you stayed." Julian secured the bandage and sat back. "Same reason I pulled that column off you." "That's not an answer." "Sure it is, you just don't like it." He pulled out water and took a careful sip before offering it to her. "In my culture, we don't abandon people who need help." Even enemies." "Even enemies." He watched her drink. "Besides, you put yourself between me and that door. Seems like we're even." Her ears flicked, the gesture almost embarrassed. She handed back the water without meeting his eyes. They sat in silence while Julian's scanner ran diagnostics. The toxin from those implants was accumulating in her system, slower than he'd feared but inexorable. Without proper analysis equipment, he couldn't identify the compound or synthesize an antidote. "I need to access your military medical database," he said finally. "Those implants are military tech. There has to be documentation. Command will have locked down all systems." "Not if they think you're dead." Julian pulled out his portable terminal. "If Ralth is still looking, it means they haven't officially confirmed your death. Systems might still be accessible." Kessvar's claws tapped against floor, thinking, "My command codes are biometric locked. They'd need my physical presence to fully restrict access." "Then we use that." Julian activated the terminal. "Can you access the network from here?" She took the device, claws moving with surprising delicacy across the interface. Lines of text scrolled past in her language, too fast for Julian to follow. Her ears pressed flat as she navigated security protocols. "I'm in," she said. "What am I looking for?" "Medical division, anything about subcutaneous implants or long-term toxin delivery." She pulled up files, eyes scanning rapidly. Julian watched her face as she read, saw the moment understanding hit. Her pupils dilated, her breathing stopped. He asked. Kessvar turned the terminal toward him. The document was in her language, but attached images were clear enough. Detailed schematics of the implants in her spine, projected mortality rates, implementation protocols, and at the top, marked in official designation codes, Termination Protocol 7. "They call it honor retirement," she said, voice hollow, "for commanders who become too effective, too dangerous to control." She looked at Julian, and he saw something break behind her eyes. "I was deployed here to die. The mission was never about taking the colony. It was about making sure I didn't come back." Julian reached for her hand, careful of the claws. She didn't pull away. "Then we make sure you survive," he said, "and we make them regret it." Her fingers closed around his, trembling with rage or grief or both. Above them, footsteps resumed their methodical search. Kessvar stared at the terminal screen, her hand still gripping Julian's. The trembling had stopped, replaced by something harder. Her ears lay flat against her skull, tail rigid behind her. 32 years, she said quietly. Every battle, every victory, every soldier I led who died believing in the Empire's honor. She released Julian's hand and stood, testing her leg. It was all preparation for my execution. Julian rose with her. "How long does the protocol give you?" The implants activate fully after combat stress triggers adrenaline cascade. Estimated time from deployment to termination 72 hours. She checked the timestamp on the file. I have maybe 40 left. Then we have 40 hours to synthesize an antidote. Julian took back the terminal and began searching through the medical files. There has to be something here. Chemical composition, molecular structure, anything I can work with. You can't synthesize complex compounds without a proper lab. This facility had a pharmaceutical research division. If we can reach it... He stopped, looking up at her. You know where it is. North Wing, Level 3. Kessvar's ears swiveled toward the door, also where Ralth is currently searching. Then we go through him. He has 6 trained hunters with him. I'm injured. You're a doctor with broken ribs. She moved to the door despite her words, listening. We'd last 30 seconds in direct combat. So we don't fight directly. Julian pulled up a schematic of the facility on his terminal. We use what we know. I know this building's layout, every supply cache, every emergency protocol. You know their tactics, their patterns. Kessvar studied the schematic over his shoulder, close enough that he felt the heat radiating from her body. Her breath stirred his hair as she leaned in. Maintenance tunnels run parallel to the main corridors, she said, claws tracing a path on the screen. We can move beneath them, but Ralth will have posted sentries at key junctions. What if we gave them something else to worry about? Julian highlighted several sections on the map. These are automated safety systems, fire suppression, containment protocols. If I trigger them in sequence, it'll look like a cascading failure. Creating chaos, a predatory smile crossed her features. While they respond to false emergencies, we move through the gaps. They worked quickly, planning the route and timing. Julian accessed the facility's emergency systems through maintenance protocols, while Kessvar marked hunter positions based on the sounds she was tracking. Her hearing was extraordinary. She could distinguish individual voices 3 levels above them. Ralth just ordered 2 units to sweep the eastern sectors, she said. That leaves 4 in our path. 4 is better than 8. Julian initiated the first suppression system. Somewhere above them, alarms began wailing. That's our cue. They moved through the maintenance tunnels, Kessvar leading with Julian close behind. The tunnels were narrow enough that she had to crouch, her injured leg forcing an awkward gait. But she moved with purpose, pausing at each junction to listen before proceeding. Julian triggered the second alarm sequence. More chaos above, shouting voices, running footsteps, the heavy thud of equipment being deployed. The hunters were responding exactly as predicted. 2 of them broke off, Kessvar whispered, heading to the suppression control room. 2 down, 2 to go. They reached a vertical shaft with maintenance ladder rungs built into the wall. Kessvar tested her weight on the first rung, grimacing but climbing. Julian followed, his shoulders screaming with each pull upward. 3 levels up, she stopped and pressed her ear against an access panel. 1 guard directly outside. She looked down at Julian. I can take him quietly. Without weapons? Her claws extended, catching the dim emergency lighting. I am the weapon. She eased the panel open and slipped through in one fluid motion. Julian heard a brief scuffle, a cut-off gasp, then silence. He climbed through to find Kessvar standing over an unconscious hunter. Her claws retracted. He'll wake in an hour with a headache, she said, reading Julian's expression. I didn't kill him. I wasn't going to ask. Yes, you were. She moved down the corridor. You think I'm a monster, what I've done, the colonies I've taken. I think you're someone who was used. Julian caught up to her. There's a difference between being a weapon and choosing to be one. She stopped, ears swiveling back toward him. You don't know what I've chosen. I know you didn't choose those implants. I know you didn't choose to be taken from your mother at 4, and I know you didn't choose to be betrayed. He met her yellow eyes steadily. Everything else, we can figure out together. Something shifted in her expression. She reached out, her clawed hand cupping his face with surprising gentleness. Her palm was rough, warm, trembling slightly. Why? The question emerged barely above a whisper. Why do you see me as worth saving? Because you are. Julian covered her hand with his own, and because I think part of you wants to be saved, even if you've never admitted it." Her breath caught. For a moment they stood frozen in the flickering emergency lighting, the sounds of chaos distant around them. Then she leaned down and kissed him. It was fierce and desperate, her lips hot against his, sharp teeth careful despite urgency. Julian's hands found her waist, pulling her closer despite protesting ribs. She made a sound low in her throat, almost a purr, and deepened the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "If I die," she whispered, "I wanted to know what this feeling was." "You're not going to die." Julian's hands traced the stripes along her sides, feeling muscle and warmth beneath fur. "I won't let you." "That's not your choice to make." "Watch me." She kissed him again, slower this time, but no less intense. Julian felt the world narrow to just this, her mouth on his, her body pressed against him, her tail wrapping around his leg. Nothing else mattered except this moment and this connection. A distant explosion brought them back to reality. Kessvar's ears swiveled toward the sound, her body tensing. "They're breaching the containment systems," she said. "Ralth thinks we're trying to escape through the emergency exits. Then we move while they're distracted." Julian forced himself to step back, though every instinct screamed to stay close to her. The research lab should be clear. They continued through the facility, moving faster now. Kessvar's limp had worsened, and Julian could see pain tightening the corners of her eyes, but she pushed forward with warrior determination. The research lab was exactly where the schematics indicated, a sealed room with sophisticated equipment still humming on backup power. Julian moved immediately to the analysis station while Kessvar secured the door. "How long will this take?" she asked. To identify the compound, minutes. To synthesize an antidote, he began uploading the data from his scanner. Hours, maybe more. "We don't have hours. Ralth will figure out our deception soon." "Then we buy time." Julian's fingers flew across the interface, "whatever it takes." She crossed to him, placing her hand on his shoulder. He covered it with his own, squeezing gently. "Whatever it takes," she echoed. The analysis began running. Julian watched the readouts scroll past, searching for the key that would save her life. Outside, footsteps approached. The analysis completed as the footsteps stopped outside the lab door. Julian stared at the results, his medical training making sense of the complex molecular chains. The toxin was elegant in its lethality, designed to mimic natural cellular breakdown, undetectable until the final stages. "Can you counter it?" Kessvar asked, positioning herself between him and the door. "Yes. The compound is synthetic, which means I can create an antagonist." His fingers moved across the interface, pulling up the lab's inventory. "I need 20 minutes. "You have 10. She drew the hunter's sidearm she'd taken, checking its charge. "Maybe less." A voice called through the door in her language. She responded, her tone sharp and commanding. Julian didn't need translation to hear the authority in her words. He asked. "Demanding I open the door and surrender you." She glanced back at him. He's confused. He thought I was dead. "What did you tell him?" "That I'm very much alive and he needs to stand down." Her ears flattened. He's not buying it. Julian began the synthesis process, the lab's equipment humming to life. Complex chemical reactions required precise timing and temperature control. He couldn't rush this, not if he wanted it to work. The door shuddered under impact. Not weapons fire, they were using a breaching ram. The reinforced frame would hold for a few minutes, but not much longer. "Julian," Kessvar said, her voice steady despite everything, "if this goes badly..." "It won't. If it does, I want you to know." She stopped, searching for words. "What you've shown me these last hours, about compassion and choice and seeing beyond what I was made to be, no one has ever given me that." "Kess!" He looked up from the synthesizer. "We're going to survive this, both of us, and then you'll have time to explore all those things." Another impact, the doorframe cracked. "You have remarkable faith," she said. "I have you." Julian returned to his work, measuring compounds with steady hands. "And you have me. That's enough." The synthesizer moved through its cycles while the door took another hit. Kessvar braced her good leg against a support column, weapon aimed at the entrance. Her tail lashed with agitation, but her hands remained steady. "Kessvar," Ralth's voice called through the door. "Whatever poison the human has fed you, this isn't you. Open the door. Let me help." She hesitated, and Julian saw the conflict play across her face. 32 years of loyalty and conditioning warring with the truth she'd discovered. "Show him," Julian said quietly. "The files, the termination protocol." Kessvar's ears swiveled toward him. Then she activated her comm unit, still connected to the military network, and transmitted the documents. Julian watched the terminal as they sent schematics, mortality projections, implementation orders. Everything. Silence from the other side of the door. The impacts stopped. "Sir?" Ralth's voice had changed, uncertain now. "These files are real," Kesvar finished. "I was sent here to die, Ralth. Honor retirement for being too effective, too dangerous to control." Her voice carried across the comm with absolute clarity. "Every soldier in that hunter unit has the same fate waiting. We're all expendable the moment we become inconvenient." "That's not possible. The Empire doesn't—" "The Empire does." Her claws scraped against her weapon. "And if you breach this door, you'll be helping them complete my execution." More silence. Julian's synthesizer chimed halfway through the process. He adjusted temperature controls, added catalysts, monitored reactions. The antidote was forming, molecule by careful molecule. "What are you asking me to do?" Ralth said finally. "Make a choice. The first real choice you've had since they took you from your family." Kessvar's tail wrapped around her own leg. "Stand down and let me live, or break through that door and prove the Empire right about us being nothing more than weapons." Julian heard voices arguing on the other side, Ralth and the other hunters debating. Some wanted to follow orders, others were questioning everything. The documents had shattered certainties, created doubt where there had only been obedience. The synthesizer moved into final stages. Julian prepared the delivery system, a subcutaneous injector that would distribute the antidote directly into Kessvar's bloodstream. 5 minutes remained. "General," Ralth said, his voice formal but strained, "I've served under your command for 8 years. You've never led me wrong, never sacrificed your soldiers unnecessarily, never," he paused, "never lied to us." "I'm not lying now. I believe you." The admission seemed to cost him something. "And if these files are accurate, then everything we've fought for is compromised. But the other units don't know what I know. Command will send reinforcements. They'll kill you both." "Let them try," Kessvar said. "Or," Ralth continued, "you broadcast those files on open channels. Every soldier in this sector sees what was done to you. Some will follow orders, but others," his voice hardened with determination, "others will remember why they followed you in the first place." Kessvar looked at Julian. He nodded, still monitoring the synthesis. "Do it," she said. Within seconds, Ralth had uploaded the termination protocol files to every military frequency. Julian heard the response almost immediately. Dozens of voices demanding confirmation, denying the evidence, questioning their commanders. The careful order of the military operation dissolved into chaos. The synthesizer chimed completion. Julian filled the injector with the pale blue antidote, checking dosage calculations twice. Everything had to be perfect. "Kess," he said, "it's ready." She crossed to him, moving without the weapon now, trust implicit in every step. Julian positioned the injector against her neck, finding the arterial access point that would distribute the compound most efficiently. "This might hurt," he warned. "Everything worth doing does." She met his eyes. "Thank you for all of it." Julian triggered the injector. Kesvar tensed, muscles rigid as the antidote flooded her system. Her pupils dilated, then contracted. Her breathing quickened, then steadied. The implants along her spine pulsed once, bright and angry, then went dark. She sagged against him, and he caught her weight, lowering them both to the floor. Her head rested against his shoulder, her breath warm on his neck. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Like I'm dying and being reborn simultaneously." Her claws flexed against his chest, careful not to pierce. "Is this what hope feels like?" "Yeah," Julian held her close, ignoring his protesting ribs. "That's exactly what it feels like." The door opened. Ralth stood in the entrance, weapon lowered. Behind him, 3 hunters waited with similar postures, alert but not aggressive. The human defensive lines are offering ceasefire terms, Ralth said. They want to negotiate. Kessvar lifted her head from Julian's shoulder, meeting her second-in-command's gaze. Tell them we accept. And tell them General Kessvar is requesting asylum. And us, General? Ralth asked. You choose, all of you. She stood, Julian rising with her. That's the point. We all get to choose now. 6 weeks later, Julian found Kessvar in the colony's botanical garden. She sat beneath flowering trees that had survived the battle, her tail curled around the bench. The injuries had healed completely, fur growing back over the scars. The implants remained dark and inert, neutralized by the antidote. You're staring, she said without turning. Can you blame me? He sat beside her, their shoulders touching. You look good in civilian clothes. She glanced down at the simple tunic and pants, so different from military armor. I look strange. You look free. Her hand found his, fingers lacing together. Her claws were carefully retracted, the gesture now familiar and comfortable. Ralth messaged today, she said. 15 more soldiers have requested asylum. The Empire is fracturing from within. Because of you. Because someone showed me there was another way. She turned to face him fully. Because someone saw me as more than a weapon. Julian cupped her face, thumb tracing the stripes along her cheek. She leaned into the touch, eyes closing. I love you, he said simply. Her eyes opened, yellow and bright and alive with emotion he'd taught her to recognize. I love you too. The words were careful, precious. Is that allowed? Kess, everything is allowed now, that's the point. She kissed him then, soft and deep and full of promise. Above them the trees swayed in gentle wind, and for the first time in 32 years Kesvar felt at peace. When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. So what do we do now? She asked. Julian smiled. Whatever we choose.